A viral video captured a tense exchange as a Texas A&M student was kicked out of class after objecting to transgender indoctrination and voicing their religious beliefs. In the footage, a student raises religious and legal objections to a lesson on gender identity, citing, quote, "There are only two genders," and referencing former President Trump's executive order. In a written statement from A&M's president, Mark Welsh, he learned that leaders in the College of Arts and Sciences approved teaching content that did not match the official course description. As a result, he ordered the immediate removal of the dean and department head. He emphasized that students rely on accurate course descriptions and that the university must honor its commitments to students and the state. One student said it was the talk on campus, and because he considers himself religious and Republican, he agrees with the other student.
I don't really agree with the things that were being taught there, and also the fact that it's taxpayer money that's being used to fund a lot of these things. I don't really think that's right if it's against the law. So I was curious what was going on. It's been, a big deal today, and I think it's right that these people have lost their jobs if they're being funded with taxpayer money. So.
Connor added that the student had done her research thoroughly, understood her rights, and stood up for her beliefs, which was bold, something he deeply admires.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. So we got to talk about a story that is going viral out of Texas A&M, starring a student who objected to a woke lesson that was being taught in class on gender identity, okay? And this class was apparently a children's literature course, okay? And the woke professor kicked out the student for objecting, right? The student basically called out the professor in the lesson by saying, hey, listen, this is against the law, right? You're not supposed to be teaching this. This course doesn't have anything to do with this. And also, this is against my religious beliefs. So they had a religious objection to it. The professor, again, got pissed off and kicked the student out of class, right? And I want to go ahead and play the video so people can understand exactly what happened here before we get into this story. So without further ado, roll the clip.
Just kind of a recap of our remarks on gender and sexuality. We read from last class. One thing we didn't get to in our last class.
I just have a question because I'm not entirely sure this is legal to be teaching. Because according to our president, there's only two genders, and he said that he would be freezing agencies funding programs that promote gender ideology. And this also very much goes against not only myself, but a lot of people's religious beliefs. And so I am not going to participate in this because it's not legal, and I don't want to promote something that is against our president's laws as well as against my religious beliefs.
You certainly have the right to engage in things that you find right. And you suggested something else.
Yes.
You are under in this conception that what I'm saying is legal.
Can you explain to me how teaching us about gender identity and transgenderism and that there's more sexes than...
Gender isn't illegal.
Huh?
My gender isn't illegal.
Gender? What do you mean? Your gender is not illegal. According to President Trump's executive order, if you want me to read the paragraph in the order itself...
If you are uncomfortable in this class, we do have the right to leave.
Yes.
What we are doing is not illegal. And if you would like to make the claim that it is, you need to talk to the department head or the head of undergraduate.
Well, I've already been in contact with the president of A&M, and I actually have a meeting with him in person to show all of my documentation tomorrow, but...
We are also aware, and this is part of why there was an observer in the class.
Yes.
I'm not convinced that your proposal will be effective in stopping me from teaching things that are biologically true, because I do have the legal and ethical authority, all of the professional expertise in this classroom.
Yeah, so you see that, you heard that. Now, this apparently is a children's literature course. I'm not entirely sure what gender and sexuality has to do with children's literature, right? But, who knows, okay? All I know is that these college professors these woke academics, these activists, okay, they will find ways to sneak in their woke ideology into a lesson or into a course, even if it has nothing to do with it. And this is part of the reason why not only was the professor fired, but also the dean of the College of Arts and Sciences was also fired. And also on top of that, the head of the department was fired, right? So basically there was a mass firing over this because apparently her bosses had signed off on her being allowed to teach this stuff in this course, even though, again, this is not appropriate for this course, but she decided that she was going to teach it anyways. So again, that resulted in the mass firing. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this.
Clash between a Texas A&M professor and a student in the classroom is now having a ripple effect.
And this morning we are learning how a new executive order and Texas law could be playing a role in all of this. Our Jalissa Garza live in the newsroom to break it down. Jalissa, that professor actually lost his job, right?
Yeah, the professors sure did lose their job. And while we don't have the original video showing the clash over gender identity, but we do have a tweet from Texas State Representative Brian Harrison, which does include that video that's been circulating across social media. And while the video doesn't show any faces, it does capture audio of a student objecting to a professor teaching that there are more than two genders. The student said it goes against a recent executive order and her religious beliefs. The professor responded saying she has the right to teach the lesson and the student has the right to leave.
Here's the executive order the student referred to. It was signed by President Trump back in January. It's called Defending Women from Gender Ideology Extremism and Restoring Biological Truth to the Federal Government. It directs federal agencies, including public universities that receive federal funding, to restrict teachings and policies that recognize more than two genders. So when the Texas A&M student pushed back, she cited that order, essentially saying the professor was violating federal guidance. This incident also comes as Texas universities prepare for Senate Bill 37, a new law taking effect January 1st. It gives regents more power to review school curriculum and to cut programs with low enrollment.
Now, Texas A&M's president responded with a statement saying he learned key leaders in the College of Arts and Sciences approved course content that didn't match the published description. The president directed the provost to remove the dean and department head from their administrative positions. The professor's firing isn't just about a single classroom clash. It's really part of a bigger shift in how colleges may be forced to handle lessons on gender identity. Jacob, I'll send it back to you.
Oh, wow. Okay, Jalissa.
Yeah, well, I mean, well, they're doing what they should have been doing a long time ago, right? Which is to get these activists out of academia, right? Out of higher education. You know, I'll never forget a conversation I had with an individual who I find to be a very smart person, right? This is a quant, so to speak. So a very mathematically inclined person, right? And we were talking about economics, right? And we were talking about Reaganomics. And this individual basically made a definitive statement claiming that, well, it is Econ 101 that Reaganomics was a failure, right? And I said, is Econ 101 really? Is that what you believe? Is Econ 101 that Reaganomics was a failure? And then we started talking about Reaganomics, and I started talking about how actually, you know, Reaganomics is what drove the United States out of a deep recession in the early 1980s. You had 16 million new jobs that were created. Inflation was in double digits when he took office, and it dropped significantly under Reagan. You had a stock market boom. Unemployment fell from 10.8% to 5.4%. Like, I think that just looking at the top line numbers, right, of Reaganomics, I mean, you could argue that it was successful in reuniting economic growth and curbing inflation, right? It was certainly more successful than his predecessor. But this person made that statement not because this person did their own analysis, even though they're a very mathematically inclined individual, okay? So, again, this is not a dumb person, but this is a person that is recently out of college. And I told her, I said, listen, you're indoctrinated. Right? For you to make a statement like that, right? As if it's a definitive fact. That is a political statement, not an actual statement of Econ 101, right? Because I don't think there's Econ 101 to make a statement like that. I think that the statement that you're making is political, because when you went to school and you took courses, and who knows, maybe this person took econ courses that made those type of claims that were political in nature, but not necessarily grounded in reality, right? And it just reminded me of how college will indoctrinate people, even smart kids who can do their own research, who should be able to do their own analysis, right? To be able to, do their own thing. Like, college will indoctrinate people. I'll never forget in my public policy class, Public Policy 101. And I didn't realize that this was indoctrination, that this was propaganda until years later, okay, when I got into the workforce in the private sector. One of the first statements that was made was that, well, tax cuts are spending in disguise, right? We hear that all the time from left-wingers, right? Leftists, when they're criticizing tax cuts. Well, you're spending more money because you want to cut taxes, right? So taking less money from the American people is spending more, right? But that is a statement that was made in my public policy class as if it was fact, right? It was on the big screen, okay? It was on the big lecture hall, on the big screen. Tax cuts, spending in disguise, right? Even though we know that tax cuts can lead to more revenue growth, okay? Due to the fact that it stimulates economic growth, which leads to the government, again, bringing in more money. Now, again, the problem is with the tax cuts from Republicans is that they don't cut spending to go along with it, right? If Trump would have cut spending to go along with the tax cuts in 2017, I think that our deficit numbers would have looked a lot better. But regardless, that's besides the point. The point, again, is that there are political statements that are made in these college courses, and these professors, they use their titles, right, as professors, as PhDs, to present, again, political opinions as if they're fact. And it wasn't until, again, I left college when I realized just, again, the amount of indoctrination. Like, it's subtle stuff, okay, that you get. Even in courses where, again, it's supposed to be fact-based, right? We're supposed to be, talking about objective reality, okay, numbers, things like that. Again, politics will pop up all the time in subtle ways that you don't realize as a student, right? And that's an example of what I'm talking about. I'm not surprised that in a children's literature course, a professor is going to try to figure out a way to talk about gender ideology, even though I don't know what that has to do with children's literature, but apparently it has something to do with it, which is why this professor is taking time, precious time, to discuss this topic. And apparently this was something that was signed off on by the higher ups, right? And this is why they were fired, right? They were also punished for going along with this. So again, it's systemic, and this is what I'm talking about. It's very systemic, and I'm glad to see Republicans doing something about it, because again, this is not what education is supposed to be. Okay, a lot of this stuff really is activism. A lot of these professors, a lot of these academics, because of their politics, they are trying to influence kids and children into being more left-wing, and this is why you have these bombshell studies and surveys coming out showing that Gen Z, they like socialism, right? They're very favorable towards socialism because in college, this is what they learn.
Look, I think it's a great question. And the fact of the matter is, in the Biden years, at least, that was when it was last surveyed, Gen Z had more favorable attitudes to socialism than capitalism, which to me spells the right answer. You can bash Mamdani or the other side all we want. What we're missing is making a positive case for capitalism itself. And if we're being honest, that's something that even the GOP at times has now in recent years gone soft on. I think we got to explain to the people, especially young people, why capitalism is the best system known to the history of man to lift people up from poverty. Think about Andrew Cuomo telling New Yorkers you're just going to flee for Florida is not the solution of a leader. Step up and actually offer actual solutions to things like the affordable housing crisis in New York City, which is a major issue across the country. You want to bring down the cost of housing? Start with bringing down property tax rates. Follow through with constructing more housing. Get the red tape stopping the construction of housing out of the way. Those are things a state government, and in New York City's case, even a city's government can do. That's what we're going to be doing in the state of Ohio. And I hope that in the Midwest, in the heart of the country, the state where I was born and raised, we're able to provide those positive alternatives, because I think in the long run, that's what's going to be required for conservatives and Republicans to make our case, rather than just really in a soft, superficial way, just bashing the other side. That's what's missing, and I hope that's what we're able to bring. I'm going to do my part in my home state.
Yeah, so I agree with that, right? I agree with that, and I think in the same way, when you talk about academia, yeah, you got to get some of these activists out of academia, and you have to get people into these jobs who are going to balance things, right? Who are going to provide balance. In this case, who are actually going to teach children's literature without the political angle to it, right? Instead of having activism in the classroom, right, at the college level. Yeah, I mean, those are things that have to happen, right? And I think stories like this are a prime example of what I'm talking about. It does remind me of, like I said, the subtle indoctrination, and in some cases, again, not so subtle, that happens in college, in these universities. And again, people wonder why Gen Z is so lost. Well, it's because of the fact that, again, they're being indoctrinated. These people that they trust, their professors, who they trust, okay? They trust their professors, and their professors are basically feeding them political activism instead of actually teaching them what they're supposed to be learning in these classes. And again, that's a problem. That's a huge problem. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.